Welcome into the Beat Sessions, your place for all things music. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Let's talk about this new record from Tyler, the Creator, entitled CHROMAKOPIA. He released that on October 28th. This is the 8th studio album for Tyler and his follow-up to 2021's Call Me If You Get Lost, a magnificent effort, one of my favorite records from that year. And it earned Tyler his second Grammy Award. Call Me If You Get Lost won the Grammy for Best Rap Album of the Year. His first win comes from 2019's Igor. And I bring up both of those accolades because I want to start this review off by saying I don't think Tyler is a hip hop artist. I don't think he's a rap artist or a neo soul artist. I really have never felt that way. When you go back and you look at his catalog, the diversity of what is going on, there might be a big hip hop foundation there, but the man has done such an incredible job of taking on personas early on in his career. I think that as he continued to make music and progress as an artist, giving up on those personas that were in a lot of ways limiting was a good move. And what we've seen is an artist, and I'd argue much like his contemporary Kendrick Lamar, an artist who is essentially a blues musician. Tyler, the Creator, is a guy that has fully embraced everything about the blues idiom. And I want to talk about this through the scope of the writings of Albert Murray, Ralph Ellison. And there's this great essay that I found from Greg Thomas. He wrote this back in 2011, and I'll post the link. But I love the writings of all of these guys talking about, and then I'm going to highlight Albert Murray's The Hero in the Blues specifically here, and his focus in that essay on the kinship between fiction and the blues idiom, how both mediums are a means of creating characters and creating experiences that convey wisdom. They convey morality and insight into life and its complexities, dealing with the holy and the obscene, that fascinating contrast of living your life Monday through Saturday, but then ending up in church on Sunday and feeling the duality of what it means to be human, wanting to abide by certain standards and to do right by the people around you, but also understanding that the world is chaotic and so disorderly, along with the universe, and that every day when we wake up, we don't really know what's going to happen to us. We have to take, to a certain degree, life moment by moment. And there's this idea, this concept of improvisation and being able to work with that, and not just working with it, but creating beautiful experiences from it. And I think that that's what's so cool about the writings from these men. I'm going to kick it off with Ralph. I'm going to keep this album review kind of loose and improvisational as well. But one of my favorite quotes, and this is coming from that Greg Thomas essay, he cites from Ralph, the blues is an impulse to keep the painful details and episodes of a brutal experience alive in one's aching consciousness, to finger its jagged grain, and to transcend it, not by a constellation of philosophy, but by squeezing from it a near tragic, near cosmic lyricism. And then Greg himself goes on to write, I love this passage here. He says, here, the blues idiom, not a confrontation, individual isn't avoiding the truth of their existence in this time, place, and space, or their particular material and emotional state. No, not only is the person who faces the blues not denying or avoiding, she is in fact looking straight, no chaser, into the experience. And this isn't just the emptiness of no forms, a disembodied consciousness. And I love that he makes that statement there, because a lot of people, and I've had this discussion with people, they'll talk about that with regards to blues, with regards to jazz, the lack of form, creates this emptiness. And I completely disagree. And so I love this point. He goes on to say the true I am self, being aware of being conscious in life is lived by what Ken Weber has coined as the unique self. In the waking or dream state, we tend to finger the jagged grain of those painful blues memories. This is a drive for the unique self to include those experiences, even taking into account those blue devils we call shadows. I've heard arguments about this new record, CHROMAKOPIA, that it's derivative. And maybe to a certain degree, there's some validity to that, but I, for the most part, completely disagree with it. I think sonically, coming off of the brilliance of Call Me If You Get Lost, and knowing that there was a lot of songs written for that record. And I feel like even though it is about 3 years, maybe even a little more removed from that record, Tyler's a guy that, like all of us, has continued to get older. And while Call Me If You Get Lost is an album that, if it, it certainly captures the struggles of any individual, and Tyler especially, he's the certainly the type of writer to talk about those romantic experiences. But I feel there's a sophistication, a development that just comes from the experience of growing into your age that pours off of Chromacopia the way that it just doesn't on Call Me If You Get Lost. Call Me If You Get Lost has a sense of a confident man approaching his 30s, knowing that he's, whatever he's doing, he's just in his zone and he's enjoying, and he's just ignoring everything in the peripheral. I know that he's got this kind of like bombastic reticence. That's how I would describe it. He's very personal, very closed off, but he has his moments where he'll blow up and he'll be really loud and he will say what he wants to say. Oftentimes it gets misconstrued. And I think that's one of the most fascinating things about the guy, is that he'll say things that are incendiary, but they're also insightful and they're worth thought. And I feel like that's in this day and age, that angle. It reminds me a lot of Jonathan Swift and A Modest Proposal. That's a brilliant essay. It always comes to mind as far as, if people don't want to pay attention and they don't want to listen, sometimes you got to be loud and sometimes you got to get in their ear and in their face. And it's not my favorite way of going about a situation. And I'm sure Tyler probably feels the same way to a certain degree. But when you want your art to resonate and have a lasting impact, then I think that there are appropriate times for that type of strength to be demonstrated. And that's what makes this record so fascinating too, is that, talking about the blues idiom and talking about the Black experience in America is something that will never resonate with me. I don't have those experiences. And so when I listen to Tyler and other Black artists talk about what it means to be Black in America, like obviously I'll never have a true understanding of that. But what I love about Tyler's lyricism is that there's a general approach to just the experience that we live as middle-aged people. And that's a big focus on this record. It's not about just being a middle-aged Black man. A lot of it focuses on being a middle-aged person and the complications that go along with that. And that's one of my favorite things about this record. I think that the difficulty of growing into adulthood, still feeling the youthful vitality that one has, but knowing that, time has been trickling away and there are certain things that kind of have a cutoff point. The big one for me, the big one that he focuses on in this record, is having a family, having children. And while I'm not buying Ferraris by any means at this point in my life and career, I understand the perspective of, when he talks about, all the people around him having kids, being married, doing this thing, and the difficulty that one faces with, what is my legacy? What am I doing? I mean, I'm winning Grammys. I am, slowly, I shouldn't say slowly, I am becoming one of the most prolific pop artists out there. I mean, I use that word because I think that what he's doing sonically defies genre classification. And I think that, when all is said and done, Tyler, the Creator's legacy certainly will be in his music. But I think as an individual, he's reached a point that, it's not just necessarily about the art. It's about who I am as a person and what I bring to the table in that regard. And that can weigh a lot on us. It makes me think of the way that I think the toughest thing about your 30s is battling your own expectations for yourself while also trying to come to terms with the expectations of the people around you, your friends, your family, the people that love you. Because to a certain degree, like, you want to honor those. You want to, in some way, do right by those individuals. But there's also the need to feel independent, to feel, the freedom to navigate life how you want to. And that's complex. And I feel that this album, especially lyrically and in its disjointed production, because that's another one of the things that I've read as well. People talking about how it doesn't seem like this album has the fluidity that Call Me If You Get Lost did. And I will say that from a production standpoint, the way that each track moves just brilliantly right into the other for the most part, there is an amazing sonic continuity in that regard. But I also think that talking about concept, going into this bigger idea of what the music is a reflection of, I think that the sometimes disjointed nature of this record really mirrors the experience that Tyler is having as a middle-aged person. Or, you know, like moving into middle-aged years. He's 33 now, but it's crazy how fast like that 7 years will go by and then all of a sudden you're 40. Like that's what I'm feeling right now. Like it feels like 33 was just yesterday to me. So the talk of like gray chest hairs, gray beard hairs, it's, you know, and it makes me think of The Cure. Like I'm standing out in the dark wondering how I got so old. It's, you know, it's one of the biggest puzzles in life. You know, you think that you have all the time in the world when you're young, but then all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, it's running out. And I think that this record is such a just a phenomenal exploration of all those emotions that come into play when you reach that age, when you reach that time in your life when you start thinking about the great beyond. One of my favorite lyrics is in the opener, St. Chroma. Tyler says, "I don't like the way this is looking. Mirror got me thinking about my bookend. I just need this time to myself to figure me out. Do I keep the light on or do I gracefully bow out?" And I hope that he chooses not to bow out, because I think while, you know, the arguments will be out there, I'm curious to see what you guys think of, as far as the sonic experience of this record, you know, based against some of his previous efforts. But I think that this is we just have another great example of an artist that they don't need to navigate new territory musically necessarily, because the perspective, the lyricism, the damn right poetry that they're throwing down is resonating in such a way that it stands up. It stands up in its own right. I mean, I think that in a lot of ways, Tyler's the type of guy that he could put out an a cappella record and say what he wants to say, and I think it would be a banger. That's the cool thing about this record, though, too. I think from a vocal standpoint, coming off of Call Me If You Get Lost, there was an aggression, an assertiveness to the cadence in his voice when he was rhyming. And this record, I feel like there's more singing, and I feel even on those tracks where there's, you know, there's a couple of songs on here that are just flat out bangers, as there should be, because the guy does it best. But there's moments where, you know, musically there might be similarities to what he was doing on Call Me If You Get Lost, but the inflection in his voice, there's just a softer, more gentle, I'd argue vulnerable cadence. You know, this definitely feels like the record that Tyler is opening up the most to us, and just frankly being honest about all of this stuff, you know, whether it's his relationship with his father, which comes into question here. I love the way that his mother, Bonita Smith, narrates a ton of this record. And if you're familiar with Tyler and his catalog, you know, he's said a lot of very incendiary things about his father, but, you know, on this new record, on a song like Him, you know, there's this idea of accepting the fact that people aren't perfect and that circumstances arise. And his mother says, you know, like your father wanted to be here. I just, you know, maybe it's my fault. Like I didn't feel like he'd be a good influence. You know, life is generally complicated, and especially as we get older, we discover more truths. Sometimes those are hard truths. And I feel that there's that vulnerability of Tyler opening up, talking about the toxicity that comes from, you know, having a fan base. You know, you get those individuals, whether it's online, whether in person, that can be jarring, that can really knock you out of the normal human experience that I think most artists especially just aspire to try to have every day. I think most of those people, even though they do great things from an artistic standpoint, they wake up every day still wanting to feel some normalcy. And, you know, with the media and the hype that we put around celebrity and celebrity figures, you know, that's just one of the many things that that he displays this vulnerability brilliantly. The honesty that comes out of a song like Noid is really something that's solid. I mean, looking at, Take Your Mask Off as another example of him being brutally honest with himself, but also writing in a way that allows the track to resonate with his audience. I'm sure a lot of people will read those lyrics and feel, maybe not necessarily the particular circumstances that come up in that song, but the concept of to a certain degree being able to constructively be one's own worst enemy, knowing when, yeah, I am coming up short. I am not delivering on the best human being that I can be. And I think that there's a big difference between holding yourself accountable and feeling sorry for yourself. And I think it's perfectly done conveying the difference in those two ideas and how one can be constructive and the other one can be deconstructive, or destructive, excuse me. But I mean, just a complex songwriter. I love the number of cameos that are on this record. Couple of guys that, don't get listed on the track list, but I love that Thundercat is throwing down bass riffs on a number of these songs. Donald Glover appears on I Killed You and Judge Judy. He's helping out with some backing vocals there, amongst many others. This is just a phenomenal record that, I don't think we're going to be talking about the musical growth that Tyler has displayed on this particular record, because I would argue that that's what the last three records have been about, finding this guy work into a new realm of sophisticated songwriting, really tapping into all the things that have influenced him and inspired him in his life. Sonically, that's, we've seen that come a long ways, but I think that this record is more about him coming a long way as a person and opening it up and just being a different, more insightful human being, maybe being a little more patient, while again, still being bombastic and in your face when it serves him right, and serves the rest of us right as well. Saint Chroma featuring Daniel Caesar, though, is your opening track. Don't dim your light for anyone is the big idea that we hear his mother. She starts the track off with a spoken word element. Like, don't let anybody put your light out. The light's not on you. The light comes from within you. It's really profound. And just setting the pace for what this record is. You get this like bleacher stomping percussion that comes in. Like, I love that element. It definitely plays a feature on a handful of tracks here, but you get the hand claps that drive percussion and the hushed whisper vocal. It's almost like a confessional. And I love it. It is just, it's brilliant, from an artistic standpoint and from a standpoint of really allowing the gravity of how personal this record is come to light. It is brilliant. There's these gospel synths that come into play, gospel harmonies that come into play, and Daniel Caesar, as far as his backing vocals, incredible. You get these light textures that are created, and then about 2 minutes in, the song switches pace. You get this, the electronics and this thick beat that kind of take over. And then that comes at you kind of hard for a few moments. And then it evolves into this electro jazz number to finish it off. And much like life, much like most of the tracks on this record, Tyler's brilliant at throwing something at you. And, within 3 or 4 minutes, you're like, how did I end up in this space? And it's kind of what life is. That's what the blues idiom celebrates. And it's what I love about him artistically and what he's been able to do on these last handful of albums. Ratata is your second track, total banger. And it comes at the right moment. Before we get too heavy and too deep into things, it's just going to roll right off that vocal element that closes Saint Chroma. You get these sci-fi synths that usher in this thick lo-fi beat, trippy synths that are going to back that up. The track just goes hard, but I really love when it hits this a cappella element that's towards the end. It's got a great hook. It's super catchy. And I would say it's, for its lack of, I guess, insightful lyrical content, for its braggadocious nature, it's still a highlight in an album that really causes one to reflect and ponder quite a bit. Fun song. It's going to lead into your third track, Noid. Big harmonies, playful synths to open. I love the loose percussion with the fuzzy production. It's sparse. It's got elements of funk that work in. I just love the way that all this ties the track together. This is Thundercat showing up for the first time. The bass goes to work, and it's definitely a highlight on this track. The shadow harmony that's at play there is excellent. There's a recitative vocal element with harmonies that takes hold for a bit. And I just love the trickle and the piano on this song. There's so many nuances that make this such, I mean, musically impressive, but also, we have a very personal track from Tyler here talking about the eccentric fandom that people like him are constantly surrounded by, and the degree of paranoia that can create. He talks about friends of his that people have just like broken in unfortunate situations. They've hurt or killed people that he knows, and it sucks. It sucks that people have, to a certain degree, lost their mind with regards to that. It's been a thing that's gone on for a long time. Go back to John Lennon. I mean, he's the perfect example of just the erratic fan base and what unhealthy people, the risks that they pose to you. And it's a real risk, unfortunately. Darling I featuring Tizo Touchdown is your fourth track. Slow tempo synths, spoken word into the acoustic guitar, horns, and I love the vocal element there that is the backing him up. The beat hits with a little more synthy play, bright R&B track. I'm liking the influence on that song. Tyler hits a bit after a minute, and the back half is going to feature another prominent spoken word element. I dig that is a big feature of this record, and tying into the blues idiom, that idea that there is wisdom conveyed through art, through experience. And this album really is banking on that. I love it so much. Hey Jane is your fifth song. Minimal, sparse production with a bit of a trap beat that hits periodically. I like that little trap influence. Smooth R&B synths that flow through this track though. It just develops great textures as it moves. And the bass is just playful, funky. Another great track there with regards to that. I Killed You is your sixth song, acoustic guitar, and then this nursery rhyme style vocal, which, it gives way to this minimal track that's just owned by the percussions. This is another banger of a song. I love this track. Layers and rhyme that build, acoustic guitar and the synth elements that work in and out. And I love the way that all of this instrumentation, it's sparse at first, but then it builds in more and it starts to come together to lead into like really light melodic harmonies that will dominate the back half of this track. Judge Judy, is your seventh song. You get this 70s soul and R&B drive, vocal balances, rapping with a perfect melodic tinge. And I love how much he is singing, talking about those lighter vocal cadences. I feel like he's maybe singing on this record more than he has on any other record, and I dig it. The beat that kicks in is amazing, complementing bass play that's there. Just a big jazz and R&B drive in the coda that moves into some psychedelic territory. And again, that's just Thundercat, in my opinion, having his influence there and having some good insight into that. Your eighth track is Sticky, just another banger as well. This is Whistles to Open. You get this hey, hey, hey in the backing vocal that creates this texture. This song features Glorilla, Sexy Red, Lil Wayne, and just I love the acapella section of the track. You get that bleacher stomp percussion with thick bass that works in and out. It's getting sticky. That line, it's a great hook. It is so catchy. And the horns that throw down halfway through in this thing, you get more sonic depth that is developed out of that. And another highlight for me. It's a really dope song. Your ninth track, Take Off Your Mask. Arguably the most introspective on this record. Get Daniel Cesar's back on that, LaToya Williams as well. But piano, funk, and bass and these trippy synths come together. They introduce this smooth R&B style track. And again, like lyrically, it's just so sincere, like an in your face assessment of the front that so many of us, pretty much all of us, put up in our daily lives. Perspective from, for both men and women as far as the balance, the things that we deal with. And I really feel like this is a track that highlights what he's going through in his 30s and that it can be kind of messy. It can be that jumping off point where those friends of yours that have families, they're married and they have kids. If you're the type that likes to continue to go out on Friday and Saturday nights, hang out, be social and stuff, those are friends that you're probably not going to see very often anymore. And it's trying to find that balance. And again, something that I feel so real. It's not like I'm sitting here going out and partying a bunch on the weekends. I mean, frankly, with my new job, I'm managing my bar throughout the weekends most of the time, but it's missing that camaraderie, that companionship with those people. I think more than anything wasn't really more so about going out, but just being with them. And now your time with them is limited because they've taken on bigger other things. And maybe you have professionally, but personally, it can be a completely different matter. It's complex. And I think, if there's a critic that, he talks about how, this album is something that has revealed, very little about Tyler, moving his catalog forward without revealing much. And I disagree. I think that he's just finding himself in a much more complex state in his life, and in a situation where, shoot, I thought I would have things resolved, but now I have even more complications. And that's a reality that I think is just pouring off of this record as well. Wanting to reach a point where you have a few things figured out, but knowing that life opens up in a way that oftentimes it becomes more complicated and more frustrating, and there's more to have to work out. And I think that this song really brings that down to earth and captures that essence brilliantly. I absolutely love it. 10, your 10th track, Tomorrow, Spanish acoustic and harmonies that open up, piano builds in over, we got this, a love song, it's what Tyler does, from time to time, if not more often than not. But, it's good to see him balance the struggles that one faces at this point in life, in his situation, with the complexities in love, what people's expectations are approaching middle age. Do we want to have kids? Do we want to get married? How important is my profession? All of these things that come to light. I love the guitar and the bass play on this track. Tempo kicks up after harmonies reappear. And I love the finger snaps that build texture, the thicker bass that comes in, and it works back to this just light acoustic jazz feel towards the coda. Your 11th song, Thought I Was Dead, featuring Schoolboy Q and Santa Gold. This is my favorite track. Pure banger. I cannot get enough of this song. You got this army-like call and response intro. It builds the backdrop for the rhymes. This avant-garde track. I love the way that the horns build in, the sparse percussion, thick beat that takes a hold, but it still stays loose. And the true performers, Schoolboy Q and Santa Gold, I mean, they just shine on this thing. It is definitely my favorite track. Like Him, featuring Lola Young, is your 12th track. Another very poignant moment for Tyler on this record. Ominous piano spoken word intro. Tyler comes in singing with this total jazz flair. There's spooky synths that float in, and the piano takes a more prominent role as the percussion rolls along as this song progresses. But it's both really jazzy and really spooky. The synths, and I love the way that they build. There's this point where there's kind of like this EDM flair almost for about 30 seconds. But the effect it's a brilliant contrast. The coda, spoken word with synth textures. And yeah, this is a moment where, Tyler talks about how, his relationship with his father is more complex than he has laid it out to be previously. And feeling the complication of those emotions, and probably having more conversations. His mother with the spoken word element on that track, saying that your father did want to be there. Your father did want to have that role. She just felt that he wasn't the guy, that he could do it, that he would have been a good influence. And, at the time you make that decision, you think it's for the best, but I think that that's another one of the big things that comes up on this record, the idea of hindsight being 2020, and looking back on things and feeling that regret so long after thinking that you made the right choice, and the gravity that's there, it weighs heavily. And I think that the song is brilliant, for that reason. Getting into your, penultimate track. Your 13th track, Balloon, featuring Doshi, is fire as well. I love this song. I love the way that she throws down on this really hard new wave synths, piano open up. It's got a rock and feel through the track, thick electronic beat, breaks into brilliant fashion. I love the harmonies that take hold, and yeah, when Doshi hits, I mean, she is just very memorable on this track, and I love her. I love her appearance there. And then I Hope You Find Your Way Home is your final song, core-like vocal, and you get this down-tempo rhythm, sci-fi synths that work in and out, fun piano melody that's there, a jazz field that spits, just rapidly over. Like I love the way that Tyler's going to work over that avant-garde jazz field to finish this thing off. A very interesting and complex record. It's fun to argue about where everything sits as far as where you can put this in the totem pole, so to speak, of his catalog. But it's a great record. It's worth everybody's time, and I think for those of you who have grown up with Tyler the Creator, who have like if you're especially at that same age and you're starting to feel a little bit of that rolling into your mid 30s, realizing that 40 is closing in on you sooner than later. This album gives you a lot to think about and a lot to reflect on. And I think that's more than anything what makes it so brilliant. That and Tyler and his poetic nature. I think there's few artists out there that, just not even just in the hip hop genre or, I know we called this blues to set this thing off, but, Tyler is, he's just a flat out poet. And I think that it's what I love about Albert Murray and that essay, Hero on the Blues. You take an educational piece, you take an essay, but he's the type of writer that makes it poetic. And Tyler's the type of artist that he can take, deep thematic elements and take complex music and really give it that structure in the midst of all the chaos that you might be hearing around it. So I hope you find this review helpful. I cannot wait to go buy this wax. We're going to give it a vinyl, please. We're going to give it a 7.7 out of 10. And I hope you enjoyed this record. Hope you find this review helpful as well. Please like this video, share it, subscribe to the channel, do all the things to help me blow this project up in 2024. And tune in to Classic Wax on Tuesday nights, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll see you next time on the Beat Sessions.